Are you looking to build a new quail hutch? You're wondering just how big you should build it, or you're wondering how many birds you can fit in the hutch you have now? That's what we're going to get cleared up in today's video. Hey guys, welcome back to another slightly rednecked video. Again, my name's Chris, and if you're not familiar with this channel, I help you to produce your own meat, eggs, and vegetables from your backyard, your balcony, your deck, your garage, or even a spare room in your house if that's the way you want to do it. This is actually a topic I've addressed before in video, but it came up in my weekly live broadcast the last couple of weeks. The neighbor's weed eating, I thought a tree was falling. So where was I going with that? We'll do this again. So, sorry, where was I? Oh, yeah, okay, a topic that I've addressed before in video, but it came up a couple of times in the weekly live broadcast last week and the week before. People asking questions similar to that, like how big should my hutch be, or how many birds can I fit in this size of a hutch? So let's talk about that real quick. The simple answer is figure out your square footage. However many square feet you have, that's about how many birds you can fit. I mean, that's the general wisdom, is one bird per square foot. Now this is an 8x3 hutch, so that's 24 square feet, if my math is right. 8 times 3 is 24, I believe. 16, yeah, 24. I'm not the best at math sometimes, but I think that's right. So that's about 24, 25 birds you can fit in here, but consider it like that. That's like permanent living. So that's 24, 25 birds I can keep in there all the time. So what you may want to consider when you go to build a hutch is you may think, well, I only need about 12 birds, about a dozen birds to give me enough eggs to, to eat, to keep me fed, to also to collect up and to incubate. But when those babies hatch out, they're going to need a place to go as well. So unless you have a separate hutch, which, I have 2 hutches that I keep breeders in, and I just throw the babies in there with them to grow out. So I like to have my cage a little bit bigger. I only keep about a dozen birds in here as breeders all the time, but right now I've got about 35 birds in this hutch. That's a little bit more than the recommended one bird per square foot. But 23 of them are roughly, 23 of them roughly are only like 5 to 6 weeks old. So it's just now getting to the point where it's starting to get just a little bit crowded. They're only going to be in there for another 2 or 3 weeks at the most, and then I'm going to be processing and getting it back down to 12 birds. So consider that when you're thinking about what size hutch you want to build, is where are you going to grow out the young ones if you're producing meat, if you're going to have babies hatching out and you want to grow them out. And build your hutch a little bit bigger than what you think you might need just for your breeders. Or build a separate hutch to do all your grow outs in. I like to actually have one hutch to do my grow outs along with my adults, because some of these grow outs I'm going to keep for future breeders. Some of the adults I might keep for future breeders as well. And if I throw the babies in here at about 3 to 4 weeks old, 4 to 5 even, then they get along with them. There's no fighting. And if you try to introduce adult birds into a group of adult birds, they're almost always going to fight. They're going to pick on each other. They can peck out their eyes. They can get pretty aggressive with them. So I like to have one hutch that I use. It's a little bit bigger than what I need for just my breeders, but it gives me room to throw my grow outs in and let them grow out. Now, I've kept up to 45 birds in this hutch before at a time, and it only really starts getting real crowded in the last like 2 weeks. But again, it's temporary. It's only 2 weeks, or roughly 2 weeks. And then I'm processing and I'm getting it back down to about 12 birds, and that's what stays in here pretty much all the time. So we'll bring you in close. We'll show you kind of what it looks like in here with 35 birds in here. You'll probably be able to tell the difference between the adults and the grow outs here. They're getting real close to being almost full grown. They've just got a couple of weeks left, but they're still smaller than the adult birds, so you can kind of tell. Let me bring you in close. We'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, let me open this hutch up so you can see. This is just one side of the hutch. And I got a bird that's wanting to fly out. Get back in there, buddy. Get back in there. There you go. And you can see it doesn't look overly crowded over here. They're all crowded around the water because I just filled it up and it was kind of empty. So they're all working on getting themselves a drink. It's not terribly crowded over here. Let's take a look at the other side, because that's where the majority of the birds are probably hanging out. All right, so taking a look at the other side here, and you can see it's full of birds too. But again, it's not overly crowded yet. They're still getting along. I'm not getting too much of a mess over here in the sandboxes. It's fine. But in the next couple of weeks, it will start getting pretty crowded. Now you may know I have 2 hutches actually. This is my second hutch right here. I do the same thing with it. I keep about a dozen birds in there all the time as breeders, and then you know, throw grow outs in there with them as well. This cage is a little bit smaller. Hutch is a little bit smaller. It's only a 6 foot by 3 foot hutch. So really that's only about 18 to 20 birds you should be able to keep in there all the time. And right now I think I've got about 26 birds, something like that. Again, it's not overly crowded yet, but it's getting real close to that point. And within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be processing birds, getting it back down to just 12 breeders. I've got eggs in the incubator right now. That's the last batch from my current breeders that I'm going to be incubating. They're about 2 years old right now, roughly, and I like to replace my breeders about every 1.5 to 2 years. So that gives me a point where now if I put eggs in the incubator today, they'll incubate for the next 2 weeks, and then they'll hatch out. Those birds will be in the brooder box for another 2 weeks. So I've got another month before I really need to worry about freeing space up to get them in here. But where was I going with that? Oh, but that also gives me an opportunity to replace, you know, to Max. Sorry, dog got all excited, got me distracted. I don't know if you guys could see that on film. He decided to go, the neighbor's chickens were right down here in the corner of the fence, and he loves to chase the chickens and scare them. But where was I going with that? So, okay, another thing that does for me is, because these guys that are in the hutch already, the young ones here, are like 5 weeks old, they're going to start laying eggs within the next 3 weeks roughly. So by the time that those babies come out, I don't really need the eggs right now. You know, I'm not going to process these guys today, but I'll probably process the adults next weekend and get rid of them. Not get rid of them, I'll eat them. You know, they'll provide food for the family. But what that does is that lets me process these adult birds, not worry about collecting a bunch of eggs that I can't use because they produce more than I can eat. We'll just about the time we start running low on eggs and really start thinking I need some more eggs, these young ones are going to be old enough to start producing eggs on their own. They'll become my future breeders, and then about that time I'll have baby birds that are starting to come out of the brooder box, which I'll throw in with the remaining 12 that I keep as breeders. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a little bit kind of complicated in my head. I don't think I did a very good job of explaining it, but hopefully you guys kind of got the gist of what I'm talking about. All right, so as far as how big of a hutch that you need, I would always say go bigger if you can. Go bigger than what you think you're going to need. Depending on how many birds you want to have. You know, if you have a dozen birds laying eggs, a dozen hens, 2 males, that's what, 14 birds? Probably have 3 males actually, so 15 birds. You have 15 birds in there that are your breeders that are constantly laying eggs, and you're collecting those eggs on a daily basis to incubate. You can collect those over the course of a week of about, I like to do about 5 days. You could go up to 10 days if you wanted to, but I like to do about 5 days. So 5 days times 15, that's going to be what, 50 plus another 10 plus another 10, that's 50, 60, 70, 80 eggs roughly. I can't do the math on my, that's not right. 75 eggs, I think it is. 75 eggs you'd be able to put in the incubator at one time. I'm bad at math in my head. But hopefully I'm pretty close on that. So you can kind of do the math backwards, and you could save for a couple of extra days, get it up to 100 eggs if you wanted to. It wouldn't be a big deal that way. But you want to make sure that you have room for those. So if you have 15 birds in here, you want to build your hutch bigger than 15 square feet. And I would always go with at least an 8 foot by 3 foot pen because here's the other thing to think about. If you're wrapping your pins with hardware cloth, hardware cloth comes in 3 foot wide rolls. So if you make it 3 foot wide, you don't have to worry about, the hardware cloth will stretch the span of it, if that makes sense. So you probably don't want to go any wider than 3 feet because of that. 8 foot long is a good size because most boards come in 8 foot lengths, so that saves you from having to cut the wood or piecing together several different pieces to make it longer. And if you need a bigger hutch than an 8 by 3, just build a second one. It would be my suggestion. But I wish I would have built the other one, an 8 foot hutch. I built it as a 6 foot hutch, 6 foot long. I don't remember why I did that exactly, but I wish I would have gone 8 foot because there's never a time where I'm like, oh, this hutch is too big for these birds. It's always better to have more room rather than less room, and again, make room for those grow outs. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. I kind of started to babble on, so I guess it's time to close this video out. I know it's a repeat topic, but I've been getting some questions on it lately, so I figured let's address it again. Let's get it out there for everybody. Hopefully it cleared some things up for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, God bless.